Welcome in, Raiders. Today we're doing another follow-up in my Classic Arena series, if you will, and in this video we're going to be talking about the best epic options for buff removal champions for your Classic Arena team. If we head over to Dark Elves faction, by far in my opinion the best champion in this role that is not a legendary is Madame Ceres. Now I'm starting out with her both because she's the best and being a void epic, one of two void epics, she is probably in this list the hardest one to acquire, and therefore I'm putting her at the top. Obviously that also reflects in the fact that she's by far the best on this list, but I'm starting out with her, starting out with the I guess least accessible epics and then moving down into more and more accessible epics as we get into the affinity epics. But there's no one on the list that can touch Madame Ceres. She's quite frankly only been power crept because there's so many better legendary and mythicals now, and people that are in the late stages of the game don't really need what she brings to the table. But in the early game, she's got to be like honestly an arena queen. Click my promo link in the description box below to get legendary nuker Karato as well as hard carry epic support Tagoar free when you register your account using these steps. Here's exactly what you need to do. Step 1, log out of Plarium Play on your PC. This link will also work on your phone, but only if Raid has never been installed on that device at any point. Step 2, click the link in the description and register your account with a brand new email. Step 3, launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Step 4, go to your inbox in-game and Karato will be waiting for you, eager to knock down enemy champions in the early game. As soon as your account hits level 15, epic support champion and reviver Tagoar will be waiting in the exact same location. These champions will turbocharge your account start in Raid, so don't delay. Click the link and register your account now. She has a great kit for Arena. This skill is insane and does two different things. The roles that I mentioned, for the team concept for Go First Classic Arena team include buff removing, which she does on this skill, and decreased defense, which she also does. So she does both things at one time, and also, obviously, there's a good amount of synergy because if there were any buffs that would have blocked her from placing the decreased defense, assuming she has enough accuracy, she will remove them and pave the way for her to place the decreased defense, which then paves the way for your nuker to do a crap ton more damage. So she is very good. She has other utility in her kit, has some stuff with fear and true fear going on, but this is her money skill. And my Madame Ceres in my current, late game Classic Arena speed farm team is still incredibly useful with the kit that she has, and this is why doing these two roles on one skill is something that not a lot of champions can boast, and it really makes her top tier for this role. Again, the video is epics only. There's legendary options for this, but we're going to stick with the epics, starting out with the best one, who happens to be a void. If you have her on your account, definitely use her in this slot. My next option might be a bit of a sleeper pick or an unexpected one, but there's not very many void epics in the game, or epics in the game at all, void or not, that remove all buffs AoE. That's just kind of more of a legendary thing typically. Seer, who's generally correctly considered an insane wave clear, actually has a little nuance that you may or may not have noticed in the way that her Karma Burn skill works. So what you're probably used to if you're familiar with Seer is she's a crazy Doom Tower dungeon wave clearer, one-shotting enemies by, using this enemy max HP skill and removing all the buffs that her team has on and turning those buffs into percentage-based damage against the enemy. But here's the thing, look at what it actually says. Removes all buffs from all allies and enemies. The catch is, to remove buffs from enemies, you have to have enough accuracy that they don't resist you, but you could build her, let's say you're an earlier mid-game player and you don't even have the gear to make a Seer team for one-hit dungeon wave clears because she's pretty demanding on the stats, then you could actually use her if she's your best option. Madam is a better option, but if you have her, the upside that she brings is she removes all buffs. Actually, besides Madam and Seer, I couldn't find any epics in the game that remove all buffs. They all just do various percentage chances to remove either one or possibly multiple random buffs, or usually just one random buff from enemies. So in this regard, for this role, she's very good. Like Madame Ceres, she also does not have an aura that you could use, so they're kind of equal in that regard. The thing is that Madame Saris also does the decreased defense. So in that regard, she's much, much, much better than Seer. But as far as where the other champions fall with the whole 1 random debuff or, you know, a percentage chance to remove anything at all, that's just much worse than a straight up removes all buffs from all enemies. So we're going to talk about those champions right after Seer, but even though Seer isn't generally known for this role, if you're struggling to fill the role, Seer is a very good option because there are such limited options for removing all buffs from all enemies. As a matter of fact, just 2 in the game that are not legendary, okay? Epic and below. There's no rares that do this in any meaningful kind of way. So the next champion I want to talk about is actually a Sylvan Watcher. There's a couple things with him. I actually haven't pulled one yet. His name is Lochwain. He is an affinity epic. So he's going to be a little bit easier to get, statistically speaking, than Madam or Seer. But given that his buff removal skill is an attack, he might run into an issue. And again, since I have not pulled him on my account, you can tell me if you've used one in the comments below if this is true or not. But most of the time you have an affinity epic that's doing an attack-based skill, the effects that the skill does won't trigger if they weak hit. So things like debuffs and even things like removing buffs will often not trigger if it's a force affinity champion, and this champion unfortunately procs a weak hit. So keep that in mind, but I mean, we're working with limited options here, and the video is no legendaries, so these are the best options in the game for epics and below. Therefore, if you're watching this, it may be the best option on your account. Here's what we got going on with this skill. 25% chance of removing Veil or Perfect Veil, that books to 50. That's okay, it's just basically giving you these 2 buffs don't count for the rest of the skill is kind of how I see it, because for a go first team, there's not a lot of champions that start out the round with Veil or Perfect Veil, and you're trying to use Lochwain on a team that goes before the enemy and all of your champions do their turns and you just take care of business. Boom, 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 gone, move on to the next battle. So also has a 75 books to 100% chance of removing 1 random buff from all enemies. So basically here's how this works. Like I said, there's limited epics in the game that do a buff removal AoE skill effectively. His is good because it books to 100% chance. That's first of all. Second of all, I would assume, it's been a while, so I don't know exactly what the feeling or the meta is right now in like bronze and silver, but in a lot of early game and mid game even scenarios, you won't be going against people very often at all, and you might even actually learn to predict the teams when you see them on the page that have more than 1 buff before anybody gets a turn. So since we're trying to go first with the team concept that I mentioned in my other video, then you're going to be assuming that you do, right? Not assuming that the other Duchess or Elva or whoever goes first, and then you have to deal with all those buffs. You're assuming your team goes first. So this would be for things like, I don't know, Intercept, Stone Skin, something like that. And given that it's 1 random buff, if they only have 1 buff up, which is what I imagine the early game and mid game experience to be, it won't be random. It'll be that's the one that gets removed, right? So just keep in mind that if you see him not do it and he's booked at 100%, see if it was a force champion, because unfortunately he does have that caveat of the potential to weak hit and the skill not work. One big upside, in my opinion, to Lochwain doesn't put him over Madam or Seer, but it does help him be over the other epics on this list, is a speed aura for arena. 20% is also not too shabby of a percentage. So he's somebody that if you're struggling for finding a champion to be your speed lead that also has a speed aura, you could actually slot Lochwain in the first position, even though he's not your fastest champion. Take advantage of his aura and then just put your speed champion in, like, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd position, and they would still go in the correct order because your speed champion is the fastest one, but you would take advantage of this aura. So that's an upside for him, okay? The next one I want to talk about that's also a buff removal champion, I don't know why I'm in this faction still because she's definitely not, is another magic affinity epic, and that's Sakara. Sakara is kind of an older, I don't know if she was in the game on release, but she's an OG epic. I believe it's her A2 as well. She's got a little bit of a different thing going on. So she doesn't have the whole random buff thing on a 1 hit. She has the random buff on a 3 hit. But the kind of nuance with her is that it never can be booked to 100%. So it's attacks all enemies 3 times. Each hit has a 40 books to 60% chance of removing 1 random buff from the target. So since it says from the target, I believe this is each target calculated individually, meaning that if you proc the chance, it doesn't just it's like individually calculating these 3 60% chances per target. But when I did the math, I think I did it right, because this is not, this kind of percentage based probability calculation is definitely not my forte. I tried to use a probability calculator, and if you have 3 events, right, 3 60% chance events to land, or like it's not landing technically, but to do this, to succeed, to remove a random buff, it ends up being that to do it one time on everyone, I think you're at like above 90%. Please, if you actually know how to do the math, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. What I will say with confidence is that it's going to be fairly reliable if you have a triple chance at 60% per, just based on other similar skills I've seen in the game. This is going to proc on everyone most of the time. I just would not count on it to very often do multiple buffs. Like, you just want it to remove one buff. Again, like I said, that's going to be probably what most players who are looking at an epics only list are dealing with, is one buff on enemy teams. So this at least gives you multiple chances. The problem for her, two problems, is no arena aura, so that just slightly bumps her down. If you have the arena aura sorted, you can discount that fact, but Lockwayne does have that, so that gives him versatility in where you could slot him into a team that doesn't have a better speed aura. She doesn't have that, but then also, even though it's a 3-hitter and it's 60% chance per hit, there is a chance that one or even multiple, if you get really unlucky, champions don't have this skill proc. So she has the chance, but it's not guaranteed. So she could do this bop, bop, bop on everyone and leave 1 to 2. I don't know. The probability is probably it'd be real low, but it could be that she takes no buffs from anyone. Probably what's more likely is the reliability would be 1 or 2 champions, sometimes, fairly often, but not all the time, would actually not proc this ability and therefore would keep their buffs. That could cause a bit of a problem, but overall I would say this is a pretty decent skill for an epic. It's a pretty good chance that you remove one random buff from each target. Like I said, don't take this as gospel, but from what I could see, over 90% potentially to take just one buff from each target with these 3 separate 60% chance calculations per target. Anyway, enough about Sakara. She's next on my list after Lockwayne. And then after that, we actually have a real old, fun fact, this guy Grimskin, okay? If you didn't know this, there's about 60, not really, but it feels like 60 reskins of this dude in this faction. It's kind of funny. So you got Grimskin. We're just going to do a quick aside because fun for me. Shatterbones, same skin, just, you know, different color scheme or whatever. Maneater, same skin. Flesh Eater, same skin. This guy's got a big old necklace though and some like feathers going on, but it's the same skin. And is there one more? Hungerer, same skin. There's so many. They were so lazy with Ogren. Anyway, I don't know why I'm Xing out. As you guys can tell, I don't always click the right thing very well when I'm talking at the same time. Grimskin. On, is it his A3? Yeah. Attacks all enemies, has an 80% books to 100% chance of removing one random buff. So this is basically what Lockwayne does. But again, Lockwayne has the aura. He doesn't. So in my opinion, Lockwayne, and then Lockwayne has like an okay damage hit on his A3, I think, for if the battle goes long. I would just say Lockwayne's a better alternative because he has that aura. So it gives you some flexibility. But really, again, if you're looking at an epics only list, you may only have Grimskin. And so you go, hey, I'll use him because that's the only option on the list so far that I actually have pulled. So here he is as an option. I believe, let me just check my notes. Yeah, that's all I could find. Like, there's no one else that does this in a meaningful way, really. And there were no rares that do it in a meaningful way because I was looking for like at least like a 100% chance, which most of these had. Sakara was an okay slot in as an alternative in my opinion because she has that multi-hit skill. So she doesn't have a 100% chance, but she gets the 60% 3 times like we said. But that's basically it. That is a very strong role in my opinion, so it makes sense that it's not super common with epics. But you know, if you have a legendary on your account, definitely check if you have any legendaries that do AoE buff removal, because the point of me doing the epics only is just to make this accessible. You should not necessarily try to use an epic just because they're on my list. If you have a legendary that does it, it's very likely that that legendary is better. But anyway, I hope that was helpful for you guys. Just wanted to give you some options that aren't the OP meta legendaries so that you could try to get this role in your classic arena team, because I think this role is very, very valuable. It's one of the roles that I recommend taking if you can't get all 5 in your team. Until next time, guys, happy raiding. Click the video linked on the screen now to see my list of the best crowd control epics for your classic arena team in Raid Shadow Legends. Check it out.